Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take your curiosity, add a stack of highly specialized sources, and give you the fast track to being the most interesting person in the room. Our mission today is a journey not just into ancient Egyptian history, but uh, straight into ancient Egyptian meaning. We are going to radically change how you see the common artifact. We are not looking at Egyptian vessels, those stone vases and ceramic jars, merely as containers for wine or, cosmetic balm. No, we're going to treat them as complex cosmological maps. These objects, simple though they sometimes appear, are the Egyptian blueprint for eternity, their guide to life, and really their definitive statement on the source of all existence. We've got this incredible material centering on a specialized New Year vessel. It's a small, late period flask that acts like a Rosetta Stone for understanding their entire spiritual and agricultural calendar. From that starting point, we'll jump across millennia, looking at funerary vessels, specialized cosmetic objects, and even the very earliest ceramic art from the pre-dynastic period. It's an intellectual shortcut to understanding how profoundly symbolic every single moment of Egyptian life was.
The first thing that really blew me away when researching this was realizing that for the Egyptians, the line between the practical world and the divine world, it just didn't exist. For you, the listener, the essential context is this. There was no such thing as a purely utilitarian object. Everything they manufactured, from the largest granite statue to the smallest cosmetic jar, was an extension of their spiritual world. It had a purpose far, far beyond its immediate function. And we need to start by understanding the time we're in, because we're going to be jumping around chronologically. But our first object is from the Saite period, which is pretty late in their history.
Okay, so when are we talking, roughly?
Think just a few centuries before Alexander the Great arrives. So we're going to start with a seemingly small object, really just a New Year's gift. But we will see that this humble gift holds the key to Egyptian concepts of time, divinity, and what they fundamentally believe defined true eternal happiness.
Okay, let's unpack this fantastic flask then. It's from the 7th or 6th centuries BCE. It's physically quite small, right? Like you said, a gift.
Exactly. It's clearly designed to hold cosmetic substances, not large amounts of drink. But what's amazing are the visual elements an Egyptian would recognize immediately as highly potent, powerful symbols.
So what's the first thing that jumps out?
You're immediately struck by the form. Imagine a round body, but it's deliberately flattened.
Okay.
An Egyptian would immediately register that shape as a solar disk. This links the object right away to Amun-Ra, the supreme solar deity.
Wow. So it's a cosmological statement before you even read a single word.
Precisely. And then, if you look at the top, the vessel wasn't constructed with just a simple opening. The neck is shaped like the stem of a papyrus plant. And this is interesting. The vessel wasn't cast or carved in one piece. It was actually made of two halves joined together. And it's the joining ribbon or band that covers that seam that holds the inscribed text.
And if we look at the whole vessel, it's adorned with a multi-row necklace of stylized lotus petals. I love that detail. It suggests that they weren't just decorating an object, they were almost animating it, giving it life.
Absolutely. That's a perfect way to put it. They endowed it with characteristics of the natural living world. And this animation is finalized by the text, the New Year's Wish, carved right into that joining band. These inscriptions focus on two central divine powers, creating a kind of, a spiritual insurance policy for the owner.
A spiritual insurance policy. I like that. So what did the policy cover?
Well, the first wish is expansive and direct, asking that Amun grant a good year for the owner hereof.
Okay, so going right to the top. Amun-Ra is the ultimate source of life, protection, creation. You're asking for the highest possible blessing.
You're asking for solar favor from the absolute apex of the pantheon. But the second wish is maybe even more interesting because it addresses a female power. May the Golden One be content, satisfied, and grant life to the owner hereof.
The Golden One. That title sounds beautiful, but who is that? And how does a deity associated with, merriment and joy connect to the grim realities of the necropolis and the promise of eternity? That seems like a bit of a paradox.
It is the paradox that unlocks the entire function of the vessel. The Golden One is the goddess Hathor.
Hathor.
She was one of the most beloved and multifunctional deities in the Egyptian pantheon. She's associated with joy, love, beauty, and yes, even the joyous excess of drunkenness and dancing.
So, a party deity.
You might think so, but her role is actually far more profound, especially when you're talking about eternal time. Hathor had a crucial, non-negotiable role in the afterlife.
Okay.
She was closely tied to the necropolis, the city of the dead, and she often acted as the welcoming host. the one who received the souls of the deceased.
And this is where the specific wording of the wish becomes incredibly important. The text asks that she be content, satisfied, and tranquil.
Yes, that state of deep, peaceful contentment is captured by the Egyptian word hetep. This is not transient happiness or fleeting joy. Hetep is an existential state.
So it's not like having a good day, it's something much deeper.
Much deeper. The Egyptians directly linked this profound tranquility to life after death, to eternity itself. They envisioned the afterlife as this beautiful, perfect, abundant place. To ensure Hathor was in this hetep state was to ensure the deceased achieved and maintained that very same perfect state in the next world.
Wait, so the Egyptians' definition of happiness wasn't just a mood, but an existential, perpetual state that had to be guaranteed by the gods for eternity.
Exactly.
That fundamentally redefines what a good year meant to them. It wasn't about surviving 12 months, it was about ensuring the conditions for eternal survival were met.
Precisely. It makes the gift profound. It's a magical tool ensuring eternal protection and existential contentment guaranteed by Amun-Ra and Hathor.
Incredible.
And we see that guarantee reinforced by the specific creatures flanking the papyrus stem neck. 2 baboon figures.
Oh, I saw those. I wasn't sure what they were.
Well, they're not just any baboons. These are the solar baboons. We know from temple reliefs and written sources that at the first moment of dawn, these animals would greet the rising sun with loud cries. The Egyptians symbolically saw them as sun worshippers.
Of course. That makes perfect sense for a New Year's vessel.
It ties the entire package together. The rounded body recalls the sun disk, the baboons greet the sun, and the inscriptions call upon Amun-Ra, the solar god. This gift is intrinsically tied to divine protection and solar regeneration, the daily cycle of rebirth.
If the sun comes up every day, you too will be reborn every day.
That's the promise. The new year is the moment when that promise is renewed.
We've established that the New Year flask is a map of regeneration. But that context is vital because when we talk about the Egyptian New Year, we have to challenge the modern listener's calendar perspective. They weren't counting down to January 1st.
Not even close. Their calendar was entirely and inescapably dictated by a massive existential geographical event, the annual inundation or flood of the Nile.
So when did the New Year actually start?
It commenced around July 19th. And you have to think about the psychological weight of this. Every year, their entire civilization held its breath, waiting for the water. The new year began the moment the flood arrived. This dependence is why they were arguably the ultimate irrigation civilization.
And this wasn't just arbitrary timing, it was precisely tied to the celestial clock.
Exactly. The start of the flood coincided precisely with the heliacal rising of the star Sirius, which they knew as Sopdet.
Sopdet.
Sopdet was a cosmic warning siren. Its appearance on the horizon just before sunrise was the ultimate astronomical marker. It told them, the flood is coming, prepare for abundance. When the flood arrived, the water covered the entire valley, reaching right up to the desert edge, a phenomenon so immense it's still visually clear in the landscape today, even without the modern flood.
That's amazing.
And because of this inundation, their entire year had to be segmented around the river's behavior. Their 12-month year was divided into 3 distinct seasons, each lasting 4 months, replacing our 4 European seasons.
Okay, tell us about the profound difference those 3 seasons represented in daily life. What were they?
First, we have Akhet, the inundation or flood. This was the 4-month period when the entire valley was underwater.
So no farming.
No farming at all.
Yeah.
The flood itself was so essential that it was deified as the god Hapi. Hapi is often depicted as a portly, well-fed man, reflecting the massive bounty the water brought. Imagine the sheer emotional relief when the flood finally arrived, guaranteeing the next year's survival. During Akhet, farming stopped, which allowed the massive workforce, the farmers, to be utilized for monumental building projects, such as pyramid or temple construction.
Ah, so that's when they built the big stuff.
The flood didn't just bring water, it structured their entire economy and social life.
And once that immense body of water began its inevitable, slow retreat.
That transitioned into Peret, which means the coming forth or emergence. This is when the black, life-giving soil patches began to emerge from the receding water. This was the planting season.
And imagine the soil was incredibly rich.
Incredibly, the growth was guaranteed to be rapid and successful because the water had left behind this wonderfully rich, fertile nilotic silt. Essentially, the river fertilized the land for free, year after year after year.
And the 3rd season?
Finally, we had Shemu, the drought, or harvest season. This was the final 4-month period when the Nile had fully returned to its banks. The intense, predictable drought was necessary for them to collect the harvest and dry the grain before the entire cycle began anew with the flood.
So this isn't just a calendar, it's a life cycle. A
Hmm.
12-month year broken into 3 quarters, all centered on the movement of the river, defining when they built, when they planted, and when they ate.
Precisely. And this is the so what. If you are an urban listener today, the source of your food and water is entirely abstracted. It comes from a supermarket or municipal pipe. For the Egyptian, the source of life was visible, physical, and absolutely terrifyingly vital. The new year was an existential celebration, guaranteed by the gods like Amun and Hapi, and signaled by the stars, Septet. The predictability of this flood was the bedrock of their entire cosmological and political order.
If the river failed.
If the river failed, the world ended. It's that simple.
That stark contrast is fascinating. We depend on abstract supply chains. They depended on a deity that flowed past their doorstep. Now we understand the cosmic timing and the river's central role. Let's look closer at the specific flora used in the decoration of that New Year flask and other vessels. Let's start with the universally beloved lotus.
Right. The lotus grew in massive quantities in the Nile and its marshes. Its symbolic power is profound because it perfectly captures the cycle of regeneration.
How so?
The flower opens fully in the morning, only to close and sink beneath the water in the evening. This mirrors the journey of the solar deity, who disappears into the underworld, the Duat, at sunset, and is reborn at sunrise.
So the lotus is like a tiny living sun.
It is. The lotus, in this sense, is an active, physical participant in the daily regeneration of the sun god. It is the visual proof that rebirth is possible.
But it's not just visual symbolism, is it? We have to consider the sensory world they inhabited. There was a smell.
That's a critical detail often missed. The most common variety was the blue lotus, which was highly, almost intoxicatingly aromatic. And for Egyptians, pleasant odors, whether from the lotus or from incense, were considered a direct sign of the presence of a deity. The fragrance was literally a manifestation of the divine being right there. It was a physical, tangible way to experience the proximity of the gods.
Wow. And the other key plant motif was the papyrus.
Yes, if the lotus represents regeneration and the sun, the papyrus is the ultimate symbol of eternal, prosperous, abundant life.
And this is what forms the neck of our New Year vessel, turning a simple opening into a declaration of perpetual existence.
That's it. The papyrus grew in dense, marshy thickets, often growing much taller than a man, creating a virtually impenetrable jungle at the edges of the Nile. These environments were just teeming with life, birds nesting, cats hunting, fish spawning. This vibrant, overgrown marsh represented life in its most vivid, most concentrated, and most vigorous manifestation.
A symbol of life at its absolute peak.
It was.
Yeah.
Therefore, the papyrus was always, for the Egyptians, the symbol of perpetual existence and growth. By shaping the neck of a cosmetic vessel as a papyrus stem, they literally imbued the contents and the owner with the promise of unending life in the most fertile environment they knew.
So let's tie this all back to the symbolic rebus we mentioned at the start. It's staggering how much meaning is compressed into a single small gift flask. We established the body as the solar disk, representing Amun-Ra and the daily cycle of regeneration.
Right.
The neck is papyrus, symbolizing eternal, thriving life. The decoration is a wreath of lotus, representing daily rebirth and the divine scent. The flanking figures are solar baboons, actively engaged in worship. And finally, the text is the wishes for divine protection and eternal contentment, Chchattet.
And the takeaway here is profound. These surrounding environmental and celestial motifs were never accidental decoration. They embodied the Egyptians' deepest ideas about the surrounding world and their place within it. Every object they created, every vessel, every bowl, was a microcosm of the entire Nilotic cosmos.
It wasn't just a bottle for oil, it was a functioning prayer machine.
That's a great way to put it. It really was. The New Year flask was a potent gift exchanged in the temporal world, meant to carry eternal wishes into the future. Now let's transition to the objects that existed only to guarantee eternity.
Okay.
These are the large painted clay vessels from the same Sate period, the 7th, 6th centuries BCE, and they show us the most fascinating material details about the afterlife.
These were massive storage containers, right? For what?
They were large, high clay vessels used to store liquids like water, wine, or beer. They were sealed and placed in tombs. But the crucial detail for us is their condition. Their excellent paint preservation shows that they were manufactured and painted, sealed, and immediately placed in the tomb.
So they were never used in daily life.
Never. Their sole function was funerary.
And the wishes inscribed on these funerary items, they had to scale up to the ultimate goal. They weren't wishing the deceased just a good year, as we saw on the cosmetic flasks.
No, no. The wish here was for millions of good years, an eternity, and endless abundance. It was the ultimate quantifiable goal of the deceased, a guarantee of time far beyond human comprehension.
Millions of years.
And this eternal wish was visualized explicitly through the decoration. Like the New Year flags, these large vessels prominently feature repeated lotus motifs and expansive scenes of papyrus thickets. But the detailed scenes are what truly open up the Egyptian mindset.
The scenes are a literal visualization of the afterlife provision.
They are. We see people bringing the gifts of the Nile, the bounty of the fertile river environment. Men are shown carrying ducks and geese on shoulder yokes. Women are leading goats or antelopes, and birds are flying everywhere. It is a scene of guaranteed, lush provision that will never run out.
This detail speaks volumes because it tells us the Egyptian concept of the afterlife was far from ethereal or abstract. This was a physical insurance policy.
Absolutely. They had a very, very material conception of eternity. If you were a farmer or a noble, you wanted a guaranteed harvest, guaranteed meat, and guaranteed liquids for all time.
So these paintings were magic. They made it real.
They ensured, through magic, that the deceased would be well-fed, comfortable, and live a prosperous life, surrounded by the undiminished bounty of the Nile marshes for millions of years. Comfort and satiety were valued above all else in the next world. And to appreciate how deeply ingrained these symbolic patterns were, the boats, the zigzags, the water, we need to go back in time far before the Sirite period and before even the first pyramid.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock here a lot. We're going way back before writing, before the pharaohs.
We're traveling back to the 4th millennium BCE, during the pre-state, pre-writing period of the Naqada culture, which developed near modern Luxor.
The Naqada culture.
The tradition of making ceramic vessels is ancient, and because these early Naqada-ware vessels lack hieroglyphs writing had not yet been fully developed, the decorations themselves are crucial for understanding the earliest foundations of Egyptian thought. The symbols they chose show us what was absolutely essential to them at the very dawn of their civilization.
And what are the foundational ideas we can distill from these earliest pots? What mattered most?
It all centers entirely on the life source and movement. First, there is the zigzag pattern. On a specific type of pot, we see this pattern repeated, and it's not just geometric.
It means something.
It forms part of the hieroglyph for water. From the earliest times, the symbol of the water source was integrated into the container itself, making the vessel an active signifier of life.
Wow. Okay, what else?
Second, we see boats and skiffs. These were, and remained for millennia, the primary means of transportation on the Nile. They are often depicted with surprising detail, featuring cabins and many oars, looking somewhat like a comb or, a centipede rowing its way along.
Which emphasizes the functional importance of the river.
Not just for irrigation, but for movement, commerce, and the eternal journey in the afterlife. The third common motif is the human figures, often depicted with raised arms.
And we don't know what they're doing.
Because we lack writing from this period, their exact function is a mystery. They are conventionally called dancers, but they could represent priestesses, singers, or individuals engaged in high ceremonial life connected to the river. What is clear is that ceremonial life was deeply important from the very beginning.
And the last one.
And finally, tying it back to our New Year flask, we see a very early motif, the spiral. This is an ancient, potent solar sign.
A solar sign, even back then.
Yes. Its presence on these pre-dynastic ceramics proves that the two great sources of life, the sun, Amun-Ra, and the water, the Nile, were intertwined as primary cosmic forces from the absolute earliest stages of Egyptian culture. They understood the necessity of sun and water working together long before they built temples to them.
Okay, moving from the practical, accessible material of clay, we have to talk about the Egyptians' distinct and, frankly, obsessive preference for stone. This sets them apart from virtually every other ancient culture. They used these incredibly hard stones like basalt, granite, and diorite, not just for monumental constructions, but for small, delicate vessels. And I have to challenge the logic of this from a modern perspective. Working hard stone like diorite or granite is extremely difficult, requiring a tremendous, punishing amount of effort and time. Why put that level of labor into a vessel that is heavy, inconvenient, and easily replaced by a clay pot?
You raise the central question, and the answer lies entirely in eternity. The investment in labor was not a practical consideration, it was a spiritual guarantee.
How so?
For the Egyptians, stone guarantees the eternal existence of the item. Clay can break, it can degrade, it can decompose. Stone ensures that the vessel will never be destroyed. Imagine grinding and polishing diorite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, using nothing but sand and water, and maybe copper tools that were softer than the stone itself. The hours, the days, the weeks invested into a single small vessel dwarfed the effort required for a clay jar.
So the effort itself was part of the magic.
The immense effort underscored their belief that stone equaled permanence, and the effort itself guaranteed the longevity required for eternal life. Because they're heavy and inconvenient, these stone vessels were highly suitable, even mandatory, for the burial context. They were created to exist forever, ensuring that whatever purpose they served, that purpose would continue into infinity.
And among the favored stones was Egyptian alabaster or calcite. It's beautiful stuff.
Calcite was beloved throughout their history. It ranges from creamy white to golden yellow, often featuring beautiful natural swirling patterns. And critically, if it is carved thinly, it actually glows when held up to a light source. It's an incredibly striking material, used extensively for vessels, statues, and even entire coffins.
And we have a fantastic example of a calcite vessel that links this ancient desire for permanence to to a modern geopolitical event.
Yes, this is a great story. Let's look at a specific vessel recovered from the vast tomb complex of King Djoser during the Third Dynasty of the Old Kingdom.
Djoser, the step pyramid.
That's the one.
Right.
We're talking about 27th to 26th centuries BCE. His complex at Saqqara, ancient Memphis, is famous for that pyramid. What's interesting is that the vessel itself is likely older, perhaps from the preceding Second Dynasty. It was found among an astonishing cache, approximately 40,000 other vessels, mostly stone, in the subterranean structures beneath the step pyramid. 40,000. When they constructed Djoser's underground complex, they basically incorporated and thus perfectly preserved the earlier structures of the Second Dynasty.
40,000 vessels. That speaks to a commitment to materializing the afterlife that is just. It's almost unfathomable today.
It speaks to the wealth and the commitment to eternal life, yes. Now, fast forward thousands of years to the 20th century. This specific vessel has a unique modern significance. It was presented as a gift to the Soviet Union by Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser.
No way. A gift of ancient eternity for modern geopolitical aid.
Absolutely. It was a thank you gift for Soviet assistance in constructing the Aswan High Dam. It's a remarkable loop of history. The dam was built to control the very Nile flood that defined the ancient calendar.
And the thank you gift was an ancient vessel whose original function was to guarantee eternal existence within a tomb.
Precisely. The ultimate symbol of permanence was used in an act of statecraft related to controlling the source of all Egyptian permanence. It's really quite poetic.
If we turn back to the cosmetic vessels, we enter a realm where form and function merge with spiritual protection, often centered on the feminine and fertility. This provides another layer of insight into Egyptian daily life. Egypt was renowned throughout the ancient world, wasn't it? As the source of the best, highest quality perfumes and fragrant oils.
They were the masters. But these plant-derived oils weren't just a luxury. They were essential for daily life, for medicine, and for counteracting the effects of the harsh Egyptian environment.
And it wasn't just the sun they were fighting.
To understand why oil was a necessity, we have to talk about water. Specifically, we have to talk about natron.
Natron, that's the salt they use for mummification.
Exactly. Natron is a naturally occurring salt and soda mixture that Egyptians used as a disinfectant and, crucially, during mummification to rapidly dry out the body. It's highly hygroscopic. It aggressively sucks moisture out of everything it touches.
Which is perfect for preserving the dead, but terrible for living skin.
Terrible. Washing with water containing trace amounts of natron, or just exposure to the intensely dry climate, would rapidly dehydrate the skin. Therefore, oil was a daily, non-negotiable necessity to maintain skin elasticity and comfort. They were constantly fighting the chemical effects of their own sanitation and funerary practices.
And they had specialized oils for specific purposes.
Yes, like behan oil, which was derived from the moringa tree. This tree was low-growing and native to the eastern Mediterranean, making the oil an import and very costly.
And what was it used for?
We know from medical texts that its specific practical use was by pregnant women to massage their abdomen, either to prevent or treat stretch marks formed during pregnancy. It was the expensive ancient Egyptian equivalent of cocoa butter.
And this brings us to one of the most remarkable examples of form-reflecting function. The vessels shaped like pregnant women, often found to contain residue of this specific oil.
Yes, we have several examples of these ceramic vessels, where the figure is clearly pregnant and appears to be supporting or massaging her abdomen. The vessel's shape is a perfect reflection of its intended use and contents. But there's a wonderful iconographic twist that embodies the holistic Egyptian worldview.
A twist. What is it?
When you look closely at these female figures, you realize that the form blends the human image with divine protection. The legs and the distinctly pendulous breasts, the signs of a female who is nursed and is ready to nurture again, belong not just to a woman, but to a female hippopotamus.
A hippo, which identifies her immediately as Tauret.
Exactly. This is Tauret, the goddess who is the fierce yet beneficent patroness of women and children. She was a major figure in domestic cult.
So in one object, you have the human woman performing a daily practical ritual.
Seamlessly blended with the protective deity who assists her in that daily life. The vessel ensures both the practical application of the expensive oil and the necessary spiritual protection for a successful birth. The spiritual and the mundane are one.
That blending of the divine into the most mundane, private aspects of life is stunning. And beyond these specialized oil jars, the New Kingdom, that period of great opulence in the second half of the second millennium BCE, produced an explosion of cosmetic vessel forms, almost all of them recovered from tombs.
The New Kingdom was a period of material luxury. We see faience vessels, a kind of glazed ceramic shaped like the lotus flower itself, or painted with images of ducks and grapes. The grapes, of course, signaling wine and fertility.
What else?
We also find these intricate cylindrical containers, often doubled or even quadrupled, specifically designed to hold eye paint, like kohl or galena. And they have a thin, separate cylinder alongside specifically for the application stick.
Very practical.
And then there are the flat, duck-shaped pallets or vessels, usually made of alabaster or limestone. And here is the fascinating detail. These ducks are often shown prepared for sacrifice. You can see their heads twisted back to the side.
Oh.
It signifies that they are not living birds, but provisions of meat destined for the next world. The vessel, by taking the form of the offering itself, underscores its destiny as a permanent grave good intended to feed the deceased for eternity. Our final deep dive is into perhaps the most beautifully carved, yet often historically misunderstood, type of Egyptian vessel. These thin, flat spoons. They're miniature works of art, often showing incredibly detailed scenes. A girl wading through a papyrus thicket, a stylized bouquet of lotus, or even a solar disk rising from marsh stems. But the very name we use for them, cosmetic spoons or toilet spoons, is rooted in a historical error, isn't it? A misclassification based on early European assumptions about what a noble woman needed.
It is. The initial designation was given by Jean-François Champollion, who, deciphered hieroglyphs in 1822. He assumed that these delicate objects belonged in a noblewoman's toilet kit used for storing or applying fragrant ointments.
And the name stuck.
It stuck for centuries, defining the object's function as purely cosmetic. But the problem, as we see with so many artifacts, is one of archaeological context. Most of these spoons were removed from Egypt by collectors in the 19th century and lack documented archaeological records. Their contents were cleaned out, leaving us with only the beautiful form.
So we lost the evidence. But if the primary function was for, say, ritual burning, why put such staggering artistry into an object that was essentially a disposable incense burner? That seems like a massive waste of artistic effort.
That is the ultimate question. The artistry suggests a function far more important than a simple daily implement. We have to look at the surviving clues. A few extremely rare examples preserve remnants of what they once held.
And what did they find?
Chemical analysis showed traces of myrrh, a fragrant, precious resin imported from the Horn of Africa.
Myrrh, not makeup.
Not makeup. Furthermore, a handful of extremely rare inscriptions found on some spoons contain wishes directed to the deceased. Things like, may you inhale myrrh, may you drink wine.
And why myrrh? What was its significance?
Myrrh was a costly, fragrant resin that was burned during food and product sacrifices, both in the tomb cults and in the temple cults, to feed the dead and the gods. The fragrance, as we discussed with the lotus, was considered a manifestation of the divine. You didn't just place food on the offering table, you made the offering table fragrant and divine.
So if the contents were myrrh, used for ritual sacrifice, the name cosmetic spoon is completely misleading.
It is. The strong consensus among researchers, based on the residue, the inscriptions, and the ritualistic iconography, is that these were sacrificial or votive spoons. They were used in temples and tombs to store and perhaps dispense precious imported substances like myrrh for burning during offerings. Their function was to magically ensure the continued feeding and blessing of the gods and the deceased.
And to truly appreciate the height of this ritual vessel art, we have to look at the masterpiece known as the swimmer spoon.
Ah, the swimmer spoon.
Dating to the New Kingdom, about the 15th century BCE, it's not merely a vessel, it is a miniature sculptural masterpiece. The figure of the girl acts as the handle, and the stylized lotus flower she carries forms the bowl or container itself.
It's just exquisite.
She is depicted swimming or wading through the Nile, carrying this offering to her master in the temple or the tomb. The lotus bowl is often painted pink, which likely reflects the rising sun at dawn, connecting the offering right back to the theme of solar rebirth.
And the luxury of the New Kingdom is evident in its construction.
Absolutely. The refinement is exceptional. The figure and the bowl are carved from bone, but the girl's elaborate wig is crafted from imported, expensive ebony wood.
Ebony that had to be brought from regions far south of Egypt.
Exactly. Ebony was highly valued, and its presence confirms that this was an object of extreme wealth and status, destined only for the most powerful tombs.
This object then embodies Nefer, that Egyptian concept of perfection.
Exactly. And Nefer is one of the most important concepts in Egyptian philosophy, far exceeding our concept of mere beauty. Nefer means beauty, perfection, and completion, but it carries a deeper philosophical weight. It means alignment with the cosmic and ethical order established by the Creator God.
So it's not just pretty, it's cosmically correct.
That's a good way to put it. Something was Nefer if it was flawless, whole, and reflected the original perfect plan for the universe. The spoon was created in a state of Nefer so that its function, the magical delivery of myrrh to the dead, would be eternally successful. It wasn't just aesthetic. It was a tool for cosmic alignment. It was intended to magically function for eternity, guaranteeing the perfect continuance of the offering.
This deep dive began with a seemingly simple gift flask, but we quickly realized that for the Egyptian, a good year was defined not by temporary wealth or transient joy, but by the continuous favor of the gods, guaranteed by the never-ending predictable cycle of life brought by the Nile. Every item we looked at, from the early zigzag Nakata pots that mapped water onto the clay, to the complex bone and ebony sacrificial spoon that embodied cosmic perfection, was a physical prayer. These vessels guaranteed the owner not just survival, but eternal contentment, that profound, tranquil state of Hetep within the perfect, abundant, Nilotic world they built their entire civilization upon. They understood that their spirituality had to be materialized.
It forces us to reflect on the immense, inescapable power of the river. The Egyptian definition of their new year, their seasons, and their ultimate hopes was entirely external. It was dictated by the flood, the star Sopdet, and the immutable geography of the Nile Valley. Everything they created, every object, every hope they held for the afterlife was an extension of this watery, geographical reality. So here is something to mull over as you conclude your deep dive. The Egyptians were utterly tethered to the Nile. We today are tethered to the network, to the metropolis, to invisible infrastructure. Considering how profoundly the Nile shaped their concept of eternity, what essential, inescapable geographical or environmental element in your world, the scarcity of space in a crowded city, the constant hum of digital communication, or the need for speed and efficiency, might secretly be shaping your deepest hopes and fears about the future. Is your eternity shaped by the digital noise or the demand for constant connectivity? And what are the secret vessels you use every day that embody those modern anxieties and wishes?
Something to ponder indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.